Good afternoon to all. We are waiting for a special guest. She will be arriving within 15 minutes. So we will start our program post that. I would request all of you to put your mobiles on silent mode so that we can conduct the program smoothly. Thank you all. Respected Honorable Chancellor Sir, Vice Chancellor Sir, Deans, Directors, distinguished guests, faculty members, dear students and colleagues. A very warm welcome to everyone gathered here today as we observe 14th August as a day to remember the horrors of the partition of India. To begin the program, let's welcome the team of Musicorum Club to present the national song. Thank you. Partition was not merely a political event that redrew the boundaries of a nation. It was a deeply painful human tragedy that uprooted millions of people from their homes, separated families, shattered communities, and left behind memories of violence, displacement, loss, and uncertainty. For countless people, the freedom of 1947 arrived alongside the anguish of having to leave behind everything they had known and loved. Today, as we remember those difficult days, our purpose is not to reopen wounds or to nurture bitterness. Rather, it is to remember, reflect, and learn. History acquires meaning when it helps us understand the consequences of hatred, intolerance, communal division, and violence. The memories of partition remind us of the tremendous human cost that societies pay when differences are allowed to become divisions. At the same time, the history of partition also reminds us of extraordinary acts of humanity. There were people who protected their neighbors, shared food and shelter, helped strangers to cross dangerous borders, and stood by one another during the darkest moments. The stories of compassion are equally important for the younger generations to remember. As an institution of higher education, Adamas University believes that education must go beyond classrooms and examinations. Education must cultivate empathy, critical thinking, historical awareness, and a commitment to social harmony. Remembering the past responsibly is an essential part of that educational journey. Now let me welcome our first speaker of the panel, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Suranjan Das, to enlighten us on this.
Honorable Chancellor, Sir, Madam Mitro, Professor Siti Kumar Sarkar, who has been a friend and colleague of mine for at least 4 or 5 decades, my esteemed colleagues, and of course my very dear students. Could I first put on record our sincere thanks to Honorable Chancellor, Sir, for enabling us to organize this program, which should enable us to remember the tragedy, the human tragedy, that accompanied the transfer of power on the 15th of August 1947. The celebration of independence should not make us forget this tragedy. And we remember this tragedy so that a popular consciousness can be generated, so that this tragedy, such a tragedy, cannot be repeated in the coming days. When on the midnight of the 15th August 1947, India made a tryst with destiny, it marked the end of the world's longest freedom movement. Unfortunately, the transfer of power occasioned an India divided along religious lines. At the present moment, I need not go into the background of this partition, but to take this opportunity to quote from John Smith, the private secretary to the Bengal governor, to demonstrate the sense of satisfaction of the departing British officials in creating the 2 separate states of India and Pakistan. I quote, "What a truly remarkable achievement it was to create 2 new dominions and to divide 2 of the largest and most troublesome provinces in India, Bengal and the Punjab," unquote. The independence thus came to be associated with a human calamity caused by a loss of at least 1 million lives from communal riots and forced migration of 10 to 15 million across the 2 newly created successor states. The 2 provinces of India directly affected by the dissection of the subcontinent along religious lines were Bengal and the Punjab, and these were the states which faced large-scale migration across their newly created boundaries. According to a very modest estimate, about 16 million people were involved with this process, making it the largest forced migration in human history. There were 5 distinct waves of this migration. A. Indian Muslims from North India going over to West Pakistan, primarily to Sindh. B. Muslims from East Punjab migrating to West Punjab. C. Hindus and Sikhs from West Punjab coming to East Punjab. D. Hindus and Buddhists from East Pakistan migrating to West Bengal. And E. Muslims from West Bengal going over to Eastern Bengal. I propose a brief unfolding of the dimensions of the tragedy of these millions in West Bengal who were overnight turned into refugees. What was the nature of the trauma of these refugees? How did they cope with the dislocation? What help did the state provide them? Was there any connection between the pattern of the refugee settlements and long-scale and long-term regional developments? These are some of the questions which need to be addressed as we remember the sufferings and hardships endured by the people of Bengal during the period of the partition. The massive influx of refugees from eastern to western Bengal had an unsettling impact on the society and economy of West Bengal. The size of the Hindu exodus from the east to West Bengal alone is believed to have reached about 3.14 million by the end of 1958, although if we take into account the migration from East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, to to the Indian states of West Bengal, Assam and Tripura between 1946 and 1964, the estimated figure is more than 5 million. No sizable migration of Muslims took place from West Bengal to East Bengal before the 1950s. But by 1964, nearly 1.5 million had left West Bengal, Bihar, Assam and Tripura for East Pakistan. Most of the refugees from East Bengal coming to West Bengal, according to some estimate 80% of the total, settled in and around Calcutta. Although already a congested city, Kolkata came to be plagued by an acute housing shortage, rising price levels, unemployment and epidemic, and the disruption of an economic structure that had historically bound the two parts of British Bengal. Placed in a new and uncertain environment, the refugees too were tormented by a sense of despair and helplessness. A handful coming from a Bhadralok background could bring some means of economic sustenance that enabled them to rent dwellings in slums or lower middle class localities in and around Kolkata. But an overwhelming section had to be content with being huddled in shelter camps or even within a 39 square feet area marked out by rope on the platforms of Shialda station in Kolkata, deprived of basic amenities of public hygiene. The following report from a contemporary newspaper captures the harrowing experience of these refugees. I quote, "How do these refugees spend their days and nights on the station platform? Imagine young women taking their bath in the open with thousands of people around. Imagine again sleeping in a place a few feet away from a room which is used by thousands as an latrine and which remains unserviced for days together. Imagine again cooking your food on 3 bricks with rubbishous fuel on the street along which pass hundreds of motor carts, lorries and other kinds of vehicles. This is how they spend their days," unquote. Many refugees also took shelter in parks, pavements, public buildings and refugee camps. Young women in such camps were particularly at risk, as unscrupulous people masquerading as relief workers cheated them. Unfortunately, the Delhi government and the Congress party failed to display a humanitarian concern for the East Bengali refugees. Consequent to the Nehru-Liaquat Ali Pact of 1950, the Hindu minorities in East Bengal were urged to reaffirm their right of citizenship in the new state of East Pakistan. But this policy failed, largely due to communal riots in East Bengal in 1950, causing a fresh Hindu exodus from East to West Bengal. This second wave of migrants, arriving whether in Kolkata or the bordering districts like Malda or Murshidabad, were preeminently poor peasants and agricultural laborers, mostly from the lower castes, who did not have any societal connection for rehabilitation in West Bengal. Regrettably, the then Bengal government failed to cope with the social crisis. It tried to fight a rearguard action through resettlement plans in the distant Andaman Islands and uninhabitable Dandokarondo in Madhya Pradesh. But these schemes backfired, which made the refugees' population in West Bengal fall back upon what the historians called a self-rehabilitation program. They had no option but to converge in the refugee or squatter colonies that cropped up in the Kolkata neighborhood in Taliganj, Jadavpur, Damdam, Howrah, Kosba, Santoshpur and Baranagar, and the districts of Malda, Bankura, Birbhum, Midnapur, Bardwan, Nodia, Murshidabad, West Dinajpur, Kuch Bihar, Jalpaiguri and 24 Parganas. These squatter colonies were formed by collective settlement on vacant private, government and wastelands, a process which has come to be known in popular parlance as Jabardakhl. Conditions in these squatter colonies were extremely unhealthy. Deprived of honorable means of livelihood, many camp dwellers took recourse to smuggling, stealing and prostitution to scrape together a living. Besides, such settlements often invited threats of eviction, against which government help was not always forthcoming. An instant response of the original inhabitants of West Bengal to this refugee influx was one of intense hate and horror. The refugees were identified as the main source of social distress. Original Kolkata inhabitants tended to avoid contact with the dirty, unwanted refugee crowd and sought to culturally distance themselves from the East Bengalis, causing the us versus them syndrome. Dubbed as Bangals, the East Bengal refugees were negatively stereotyped as troublesome, lazy, backward, and grasping. Food habits and dialects of the refugees were mocked and spurned. There are accounts of how school teachers of West Bengal origin would address students from East Bengal as EBs, as if they were to be segregated in the same manner as TB patients. The East Bengalis found it extremely difficult to rent houses. Intermarriage between the East and West Bengalis was a taboo. The trauma of the partition riots and the degraded living conditions to which the refugees were reduced also often drove many of them to the Calcutta underworld, a process which I have been charted in my own work on communal violence and on the Kolkata Gundas. The differential identities of East and West Bengalis were represented in the sporting world too, while with the two leading soccer clubs of Kolkata, East Bengal and Mohun Bagan, coming to symbolize respectively the East Bengali and West Bengali sentiments. Significantly, for many refugees, the partition meant a division within their own families, since it so happened that within the same family, some members preferred to stay back in their ancestral home, while others opted to migrate to the other side of the border. At the same time, the Muslims who preferred to stay back in West Bengal were ghettoized and dispossessed, and also pushed out from their homes by incoming refugees. The Muslim conclaves that we see in Calcutta today largely owe their origin to this process. The psychological fragmentation, pains and agonies of the refugees in West Bengal have been reflected in several novels, among others those of Manik Bandyopadhyay, Tarashankar Bandyopadhyay, Bijon Bhattacharya, Ananda Shankar Rai, Nobendu Ghosh, Atin Bandyopadhyay, Ashapurna Devi, Achinta Kumar Sengupta, Gaur Kishore Ghosh, Jyotirmoy Devi, Prafulla Roy, Sunil Ganguly, and Somaresh Bose. We have also films which portray the sorrow, depredations, and miseries following the human displacement in Bengal in the aftermath of the partition. Nimai Ghosh's Chinnamul, produced in 1950, was perhaps the first Indian film that touched this theme. We then have Ritwik Ghato's famous trilogy, Meghe Dhaka Tara, Komal Gandhar, and Subarna Rekha. The legacy left behind by Ritwik Ghatak and Nimai Ghosh gets aptly reflected in Anup Singh's Ekti Nodin Naam and Gautam Ghosh's Shankochil. However, we have more number of films on the refugee issue in the Punjab than in Bengal, and we need to answer this question. Why? Fortunately, however, the East Bengali settlers in West Bengal generally survived the odds and became critical agents of nation building in India. In the struggle for survival, the refugees cast aside the caste structures, encouraged their women to break out of domestic seclusion to join the city's workforce, and opted for nuclear family units instead of the traditional family system. While educated women joined the various professions, their non-educated colleagues got employment as maidservants or skilled and semi-skilled labor. Compared to women in West Bengali families, those in the East Bengal refugee families carved out for themselves a greater public space, which had immense social implications. More notably, the refugee population in West Bengal also evolved into an important political force. At this point, it is perhaps pertinent to stress the differential process in the migration process between Bengal and the Punjab. Unlike in Bengal, where the migration occurred in phases, the forced transfer of population in the Punjab, involving about 10 million people, was abrupt, one-time, and catastrophic. However, and this is important, the resettlement pattern in the Indian Punjab and West Bengal and the consequent life experience of the refugees in the two provinces tended to acquire divergent features. While the Congress government in Delhi remained largely indifferent to the needs of the Bengali refugee population, the rehabilitation scheme in the Punjab, thanks to the continued efforts of the Delhi government, proved to be economically viable and constructive. The Punjabi refugee settlers were provided with loans and inputs for production, so that they could begin their lives anew. The Consolidation and Fragmented Act of 1948 contributed to a rapid consolidation of landholdings in East Bengal, and in the 1960s, when the Green Revolution came to India, Punjab became the granary of India. The artisan refugees in the Punjab were also granted loans to enable them to revive their old trade. The Punjab refugees were either accommodated in houses vacated by Muslims or settled in new townships that rapidly sprang up with governmental assistance. This process was not seen in Bengal. The differential settlement experience of the refugee population in Bengal and the Punjab impacted on divergent political trajectories for the refugee population in the two states. The Bengali refugees preeminently joined mainstream national politics, while the Punjabi refugee population became the mainstay of the regional political force represented by the Akali Dal. Let me end by posing the question, was the partition inevitable? My response to the problematic is, the partition was perhaps not inevitable, but the trend of communalization in the politics of the Punjab and Bengal during the 1947 made the partition a reality. I make a qualitative distinction between inevitability and reality, since it would be ahistorical to deny the potentials of non-partition politics till the last moment, both in the Punjab and Bengal. We need to emphasize the fact that communalism in Bengal politics was never a static phenomenon, but was a developing process which culminated in an individual's perception of himself or herself as primarily Hindu or Muslim, often either prior to or during a riot, while at other junctures loyalties of class or loyalty across class may intervene to obscure the overt communal self-perceptions. Let me give some examples. The first major communal riot in 20th century Kolkata occurred in September 1918. But in April 19, when Gandhiji gave the call for Raula Satyagraha, Hindus and Muslims of Kolkata joined hands to fight British imperialism. In 1926, Hindu-Muslim riots broke out in Calcutta in 3 phases and spread to some districts of eastern Bengal. But the same two communities together opposed the Simon Commission and jointly participated in Mahatma Gandhi's civil disobedience movement. Again, shortly before the August 1946 communal outrage, which is known as the Great Calcutta Killing, specifically between November 1945 and February 1946, Kolkata witnessed spectacular anti-colonial communal unity through the Ayyanar Day and Rashid Ali Day uprisings. While barely 5 months after the 1946 riot, the Hindus and Muslim students in Kolkata joined hands in the hands of Vietnam demonstration. The tramwaymen, Hindus and Muslims, waged a successful 85-day strike. The Kolkata workers in the port, both Muslims and Hindus, downed their tools on more than one occasion. And again, we all know about the Tevaga movement, which occasioned a peasant revolt cutting across communal lines. Mention may also be made of the Sharozbor Surabuddhi-led Greater Bengal movement, seeking to bring together all religious communities which inhabited both sides of the Bengal, although the movement failed. All this represented, I argue, a direct challenge to the British, bypassing the established leadership of the Congress and the League, which perhaps made the two mainstream political forces opt for a path of negotiations with the British, thereby destroying the potentials of anti-partition politics. We thus need to understand why the possibilities of non- and anti-partition politics came to be stultified in Bengal. Was it due to a calculated or unintended failure of the Congress and the League to settle their conflicting interests during the cabinet mission episode? Or was it due to some tactical error of the Congress, like the refusal of the Congress to participate in a coalition government in the UP after the 1936-37 elections, and the refusal of the Congress to join a coalition government with the Krishak Puja Party in Bengal after the 1937 elections that drove the Krishak Puja Party towards the Muslim League? Or was it the determination of both the main political parties, the Congress and the League, to thwart any chance of emerging as ruling powers in the two segments of decolonized South Asia, that made partition a reality, which made Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation, a lonely figure in 1947, and he distanced himself from those of his Congress colleagues, I quote from him, whose political careers he had carefully nursed, and would ask himself if a free India had any need of him as it had when it was in bondage, unquote. Not unnaturally, in the aftermath of partition, many people in Bengal, cutting across communities, could not reconcile themselves with it. The partition stories, and I refer to Bashabi Fraser's excellent anthology to testify this. Even today, underneath the interstate tensions between the two successor states of decolonized South Asia, there remains at the popular level a considerable element of trust and goodwill. A politico-geographical division in August 1947 could not thus undermine the historical cultural narrative between the two Bengals. Perhaps the same was true during the partition process in Germany, Ireland, or the Middle East. The famous couplet of Ali Safdar Jafri is worth recounting in this context. I quote, "You come from the garden of Lahore, O carrier of flowers. We come with the fast sun rays of Benares. Then let's explore who the enemy is," unquote. As I conclude, I am reminded of a pertinent remark by the famous historian Eric Hobsbawm, and I quote, "The past is the permanent dimension of the human consciousness, an inevitable component of the institutions, values, and other patterns of human society. The problem for historians is to analyze the nature of this sense of the past in society and to trace its change and transformations," unquote. Perhaps this could be the guiding spirit to unfold the complexities of the human experience of the partition in South Asia. Only then can we intellectually contribute to the realization of Mahatma Gandhi's hope that despite the communal frenzy of the 1940s, India would ultimately survive this death dance, and I quote from him, occupy the moral height that should belong to her after the training, however imperfect, in non-violence for an unbroken period of 32 years since 1915, unquote. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts. Now, let me welcome our distinguished speaker of the day, Professor Sriti Kumar Sarkar, member of Indian Council of Historical Research and former Vice Chancellor, University of Bardhaman, to share his valuable thoughts with us. He is joining online. May I request the IT team to please do the needful. Sir, welcome you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning to you all. Honorable Chancellor, sir. Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir. My friend, Professor Suranjan Das, long-time friend. In fact, when Professor Das invited me to speak on the partition, I was a little hesitant because Professor Das is recognized as an international expert on this subject. And my knowledge of partition is only limited to my own lifetime experience coming from a refugee family and all the family heritage that we had from our grandparents. Now, the first questions that I would like to begin with is that partition was certainly a design scheme. The partition of India was a part of the British imperial design to perpetuate their control over South Asia by proxy and through it ensure an access to Central Asia, the region vital to the post-World War Anglo-American interest in their design to defend Asia from what they considered the influence of Soviet Russia, the old Russophobia hangover. Hence, the creation of a susceptible state out of India was necessary, which at the same time would help keep India under checks, believed to be a sleeping lion. Now, the partition conceptualized and executed on the principle of majority religious group in the geographically contiguous region left vast pockets of minority on both sides of the border. Hence, the key evil of communalism, according to Ambedkar, pitting of a minority against a minority, continued to haunt down the timeline. Hindu population of the erstwhile East Pakistan remained the most dominant problem. Now, the partition of Bengal, what is widely known as the Ratcliffe Award, let's understand who was Mr. Ratcliffe. Mr. Cyril Ratcliffe, a product of the Hailbury and Oxford, was a brilliant lawyer, but had never been to India, nor he wrote anything about it, or knew its geography, landscape, and ethnography. Strange it might seem, although he was chosen exactly for that reason, his admirable ignorance of India. It was feared that anything with knowledge of India or an association with Indian affairs was certain to be disqualified as prejudiced by one side or the other. I mean the Muslim League or the Congress. Only 3 days before his departure, Ratcliffe was introduced to the map of India. He was surprised to see the enormous provinces he had agreed to divide, which involved 88 million people, their homes, their ovals, their rice, paddy, jute fields, orchards, pastures, railways, and factories. To demarcate, as it is usually done by the surveyors, did not envisage Ratcliffe or his associates running from one end of Punjab or Bengal with theodolite and concrete markers. Most of the demarcation was done on the map, sitting in the cool comfort of the office room. British geographer engaged by the Muslim League to help them draft their demand in Punjab, observed with regard to Bengal, I quote, Hindus' claims were quite moderate. But if the Muslims were inexplicably modest in the Punjab, in Bengal they were really extravagant. Exhausted with the Punjab line, Ratcliffe, being in a terrible hurry to keep the timeline set by Lord Mountbatten, 15th August, failed to locate the natural boundary markers in Bengal, a line of hills or rivers, in the tangle of swamps and marshes and endless fields of Bengal. What followed, therefore, was the line drawn on the map without any relevance to other consideration, topographical, economic, cultural, or social implications. As a result, the railway network of Assam thus got cut off from the rest of India, so also Bengal's most viable river connectivity as the widely used mode of transport. Leonard Mosley writes, I quote, between 14 and 16 million Hindus, Sikhs and Muslims were forced to leave their homes and flee to safety from blood-crazed mobs. In that same period, over 600,000 of them were killed. India in 1947 was truly a bumper year for Baltics, but none was happy yet. Just see what happened. After the partition, a group of dejected Muslim League leaders from Bihar and the Uttar Pradesh, now Uttar Pradesh, then it was United Provinces, confessed to Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, then the education minister, that they believed that, I quote, once the Pakistan was formed, Muslims, whether came from a majority or minority province, would be regarded as a separate nation and would enjoy the right of determining their own future, unquote. More pertinent is Jinnah's parting message for them before he finally left India for Karachi. He said, now that the country was divided, all Muslim League leaders in India should be loyal citizens of India. Jinnah died an unhappy death, leaving his cakewalk land in complete doldrums. Even after Mountbatten's refusal to shift the deadline, Ratcliffe, a stubborn, independent man, personally met both Nehru and Jinnah and asked the same question to both of them. I quote, what was the question? I quote, whether the importance of a decision by 15th August outweighed all other considerations, such as the inevitable harshness of such a hurried work. To these, both leaders exhibited a rare uniformity. They were never unanimous on any other issues, but on this issue that the decision must be taken by 15th August, come what may, in insisting that it really was. That is, they won the decision by 15th August. Hence, there was no choice left for Ratcliffe but to accomplish the work by the deadline. Here, I recall Jinnah's repetitive insistence on the surgical operation, which alone he believed would save India from peril. Viceroy Wavell, the earlier Viceroy before Mountbatten, who was in favor of a united India, replied, I quote, an anesthetic must precede any surgical operation. It's quite obvious. For any surgical operation, we need an anesthetist. Under his successor, that is under Lord Mountbatten, there was no time for anesthesia, and Ratcliffe thus did the surgery not with the surgeon's scalpel, but with a butcher's axe. So, what was the result? Everybody knows. But the question is, why did the Congress leaders accept the partition? Whereas the Congress leaders, bewildered at the rising communal tension across India, ran out of patience in their commitment to a united India. I quote Nehru, quote, the truth is that we were tired men and we were getting on in years too, that is, we are getting old. Few of us could stand the prospect of going to prison again. And if we had stood out for a united India, as we wished it, prison certainly awaited us. We saw the fires burning in the villages of Punjab and Bengal, the killings every day. The plan for partition offered us a way out, and we took it. In fact, they took it with both hands. But if Gandhi, he added, told us not to, that is not to accept the partition, we would have gone on fighting and waiting. But Gandhi did not. It is $1 million question. Why Gandhi, who had assured his countrymen that India could be divided only on his dead body, did not finally object to the partition? Let's have a look at the position of the Hindus in pre-partition Bengal. My lecture is focused on Eastern Bengal only. Take the case of Dhaka before 1947. Nearly 1/4 of the intellectual giants of Bengal in the public domain came from Dhaka, Bikrampur in particular. Dhaka was famous for its temples and Hindu festivals, with Janmashtami, Lord Krishna's birthday, as the greatest festival of the city. With 700 Vaishnava temples, Dhaka was regarded as the second Vrindavan, along with many Kali temples and some Gurdwaras. A truly business center, a cosmopolitan and a liberal city next only to Calcutta in Bengal. Look at its educational institutions of Eastern Bengal. Eastern Bengal had almost all the educational institutions had been built by the Hindus. In 1947, East Bengal had 1,290 high schools, including 68 girls' schools and 47 colleges. Of these, 95% were privately organized and financed by the Hindus, who constituted 90% of their teachers. Before partition, Nearly 80% of national wealth of East Bengal belong to the Hindus. The majority of buildings, properties in each town belong to them, having larger share of the agricultural lands. And one might recall the discourse that is available in the textbook that this was an exploitation of the Hindu zamindars and the Muslim peasants, etc. But the reality does not always accept that contention. All important industries, 9 cotton mills, 2 glass works, 4 match factories, several hosiery factories, and 1 cement manufacturing concern belong to the Hindus, as also 4 banks. Scientists like Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai, Jagadish Chandra Bose, historians like R.C. Majumdar, leaders like Ashwini Kumar Datta, Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das came from Eastern Bengal. Hindus of Eastern Bengal fought and sacrificed as much as anyone else, with most Bengal revolutionaries coming from the region. Chattogram Armory raid, led by Master Surya Sen, marked the high watermark of their sacrifice. With the partition and the emergence of East Pakistan, Hindus, proud of their historical, social, and economic heritage, had been overnight reduced to kafir, Jimmi, and Muslim and Malaun. These are the derogatory terms that were spread widely from the town, from Dhaka to the remotest village. These derogatory terms designate the Hindus as the second-class people. I quote, P.C. Lahiri writes, I quote, on the first flush of independence, Muslims in general in Pakistan began to feel that they were a superior class, a ruling race, unquote. Those who want to know more about the psychological impact of this sudden change in attitude must read Professor Shamar Guho's Non-Muslims Behind the Curtain of East Pakistan. Shamar Guho later came to West Bengal. He was a prominent forward bloc leader and became the MP also. No other people has suffered and endured so much as Hindus and Buddhists of East Pakistan in the hands of Muslims. Their sufferings comparable to the lot of the Jews under the Nazis, with the difference that while suffering of the Nazis received world attention and empathy, the saga of the Hindu-Buddhist sufferings in East Pakistan largely passed unnoticed. What followed as a result of all these is a massive demographic shift to which Professor Das also referred, of the Hindu-Buddhist population to India. Millions have been murdered, hundreds of thousands have disappeared or have been forcefully converted to Islam. It reminds me of Al-Biruni's description of the effect of Mahmud Ghazni's invasion. Al-Biruni writes, I quote, the Hindus became like atoms of dust. The Hindus became like atoms of dust, scattered in all directions, with nobody to shed tears for them, or even catering to what happened to them. All these do not figure in our textbooks, while oft discussed historical discourse skips this unpleasant discussion in the name of secularism. The media highlighted what the government wanted to publish and suppressed the rest. The only exception of the contemporary press was the Amritabajar Patrika under Tushar Kanti Ghosh, who wrote fearlessly and forcefully about Hindu-Buddhist sufferings in East Pakistan. For the secularist, I recall the speech of Jinnah, the speech Jinnah made to the students of DJ College in Karachi in the mid-1940s. I quote, if we do not win Pakistan, if we do not win Pakistan, and we have to live in Hindustan under the domination of the Hindus, then all of us, mind the words, then all of us will be obliged to wear a langoti. This is a contemptuous reference to Gandhi. Keep a choti and eat kachoris. So to achieve Pakistan, The Muslim League gave the call in a meeting on 27 July 1946, the direct action day on 6th August. Jinnah's call was, I quote, what was the call really? Today we have forged a pistol and are in a position to use it. We shall have India divided or we shall have India destroyed. That set the model by which violence against the targeted community, be it Hindu, Buddhist, or Christians, was almost institutionalized in East Pakistan. Let me quote from contemporary sources a little about this institutionalization of violence. On 13th February 1946, in the broad daylight, all parts of the Feni town were attacked by the Muslims. Hindu houses were set on fire. Hindus stabbed and killed. Eminent lawyers, physicians, merchants, and leaders in public life were made targets. Passengers were attacked at the railway station and in running trains. There is plenty of literature at the lower level which has not been translated, which has not been the subject of research. That's why they have not filtered down to our textbooks. The ABP reports, I quote, almost the entire exclusive Hindu quarters at Feni town have been gutted. Definite information indicates that similar villages had been burned down. In the Madhav Pasha village of Borishal, 200 to 300 Hindu males were rounded up by Muslim mobs, made to sit down in rows in the house of the Jamindar, and their heads chopped off one by one with Ramda Katari, while women and girls were kidnapped and abducted. In a more heinous incident, hundreds of Hindus taking shelter in Mulali police station at the outbreak of loot and arson. They were attacked in the precincts of the police station itself, and several hundreds of them were killed in presence of the police personnel. The police officer in charge of the Thana himself was later found in possession of a large quantity of property looted from the victims. An old bachelor Hindu teacher who had dedicated his entire life to the teaching of the local Muslim boys was murdered by his own students. His sister, who lived with him, somehow escaped to Calcutta to tell this gruesome murder to the rest of the world. Rape, abduction, and crime against women became the oft used and most effective instrument of terrorizing Hindus. A single incident terrorized the locality, forcing people to desert their villages. A local correspondent reported from Borishal, I quote, abduction of women on a very large scale has taken place in villages of the Sadar subdivision of Bakharganj district. We have an eyewitness account of an ex-ICS Englishman turned missionary. This missionary in Borishal, who visited Sharshi village, saw about 25 dead bodies in a pit, some of the limbs protruding out of the underneath the earth were being eaten by vultures. He also saw women's dead body hanging in a house. We had no Johor tradition, but Bengal in contemporary East Pakistan, several women of respectable families committed suicide just to save their honor. Vijay Kumar Datto of Feni town reported to the Anandabazar Patrika, my own sister Renubala, aged 20 years, a married lady, was abducted by Barik Miya. Who was Barik Miya? He was the honorary magistrate and was forcibly married to his son Rahmat Ali. Anandra Kaur's daughter Mila Kaur, aged 19. Mira Kaur, aged 19, was forcibly married to Sultan Miya, civil supply contractor, after her father, grandfather, and brother were slaughtered. there were similar other reports of abduction. Now, the other instrument of terror was forceful conversion. Here is a report, and there are similar reports. I am just giving you one to give an idea how this operated. In the Rajapur police station, Borishal district, nearly 150 Hindus had been killed, and the entire Hindu population had been converted to Islam. A young man reported to Dr. M.B. Khare, president of the Akhil Bharatiya Hindu Mahasabha, in a refugee camp, that he had earlier gone from Calcutta after the phase of violence has ebbed down, to bring his parents and other members of his family from his native home in Borishal district after the first phase of the disturbance was over. He found his parents, along with other villagers, converted to Islam, and the local Muslims did not allow them to leave. With great difficulty, the young man told Mr. Khare that he could bring his wife and children to West Bengal. Even escape was also not safe. Persons trying to ship to the neighboring Tripura are intimidated, looted on the way, and assaulted. Reports are reaching here that persons with ladies and children are held up at Akhauda and Chandpur railway stations. Answers, that is the helpers, nearly 30,000 answers were employed immediately after partition. Muslims, absolutely from Muslim community only. Police and the Muslim mob refused to allow them to leave for Calcutta or Agartala. In Jeshore, Namashudra people were escaping to India, their women and children crossing the river Ichamati in a donga, while menfolk were swimming when the Pakistani police fired upon them, killing one. In a similar incident, Pakistan police fired on a group of Santal refugees while they were crossing the river Ganga to come to India. The random firing killed 14 people, and only 17 of the batch could reach the Indian side of the river. Now the question is, what is the end result of all this? The time will not permit me to discuss the disastrous economic consequences of the partition of Bengal, which remains my main subject. Just in brief, densely populated East Pakistan had no industry and industrial resources excepting jute, which was of little value if not exported to India, since all the 111 jute mills were located on the riversides of Calcutta. Imposing duty on jute exports thus could be an attractive option for the Pakistanis, but it would increase its prices at the Calcutta market, reduce demand, and push the millers to try other sources. The duty on jute was the first friction point between the two wings of Pakistan, because the West Pakistan Authority, they were very much keen on imposing duty on jute export, while the East Pakistan people, the peasants, the jute peasants in particular, they were against the imposition of any duty so that it could you could reach Calcutta market cheap. With the partition and the large-scale desertion of professionals like doctors, lawyers, teachers, traders, merchants, turned East Pakistan an underdeveloped agricultural backyard of West Pakistan, separated by 2,400 kilometers of Indian territories, of which there is no comparable evidence in any part of the world. Literally, East Pakistan was an Indian enclave, dependent on India, in supplies from India for almost everything, from onion to ointment. Even all these decades after, situation did not change much. And it is evident when we see that the Bangladeshis beeline Indian hospitals even today. But the real problem lies somewhere else. The volatile Bangladesh is still in a state of limbo on the question of its national identity. It's a push-pull situation between the irrevocable issues of the religious or Bengali nationalism. What is the core of Bangladesh's identity? Is it religion, Islam, or it is Bengali nationality? If it is Islam, then what is the justification of its getting separated at such a great human cost? 30 million people were butchered by the Pakistani soldiers to separate from their paterfamilias, Pakistan. And if it is Bengali nationalism, then what is the point of making it a separate country from India? So if this is a point that has turned and will turn Bangladesh a hotbed, a hotspot of regional instability, and certainly threaten the peace and progress of our country. When we come to this side of the border regarding the implications of partition on Bengal, lot to say, many problems. But I will conclude with only one issue, that as a part of the refugee settlement, it was originally proposed that East Bengal refugees be settled in the Andaman Islands. And the development of Andaman, if that could be materialized, then Andaman would have emerged largely as a Bengali islands, and could at least assuage the feelings of the Bengali refugees to have their own land. I have visited different parts of Andaman, and I have talked to the refugee family who are there, and they are very prosperous over there. They are very happy. But that could not happen. That could not happen because, as it is known, Napoleon said that politics pollutes everything. It is the politics, the communists in particular, the Bengal communists in particular. They didn't allow the refugees to move to Andaman, or they didn't even allow to move the refugees to Dandakaran. I have also visited different parts of Madhya Pradesh to see the condition of the people who had migrated at that time to Madhya Pradesh. So this is the situation, and what is more important is that the demographic shift, which destabilized West Bengal's own economy, and then there is a different story of growth, there is a different story of assimilation. But all these are coming to a fundamental question of stability and peace in the region, because the problem of national identity in Bangladesh will create, to my mind, a problem in near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring speech. You helped us understand history with sensitivity. Now it is a privilege to call upon stage Dr. Sri Rupa Mitro Chaudhuri, MLA West Bengal Legislative Assembly 2021-26. She is a distinguished visiting fellow IIT Kharagpur and national advisor. We are privileged that ma'am has joined Adamas University as chairperson of Sustainability, Leadership and Public Policy Cell, and also a visiting faculty at the School of Law and Justice, Adamas University. Ma'am, please do to the stage. Students, I would request to please settle down. Students, please settle down.
Thank you, Koshi Banerjee, for giving an introduction of, and I'm really delighted to be here in the august presence of the Chancellor of the University and the Vice Chancellor, and also very, very happy to see that today young children with their teachers, faculties, you have gathered together to understand and observe a day of remembrance. As our two very, very erudite, eminent professors, our Vice Chancellor, Professor Das, and former Vice Chancellor of Bardhaman University, Professor Shanti Kumar, has explained in great detail the intricacies, the depth, and the challenges that our country had faced during the independence. So I need not go into more details on that. All that I want to share with you, that in contemporary Indian history, we miss all the sensitive information shared by both these professors. Our textbooks, probably they need a bit of revision. Probably we need the contemporary academic world to concentrate on how we can expose our generations to one of the, I would say, the biggest social crisis that we in West Bengal have gone through. There are few words I think the young children during your course of education, research, you may look at, examine, investigate, and may like to read more, which is what was the status of the refugees then, and what is the status of these refugee families now. Where are they? What has our state, when I say state, I mean the Union of India, has perceived or conceived to support the generations of the refugee families? I would also like you to understand the contours of, I think, world's worst migration crisis. The world was created, as we say, by God. So there was no boundaries in God's world. But how a man-made tragedy, a crisis, as Professor Shanti Kumar has very deeply explained to us, the theory of Radcliffe, that how that devastating crisis led to a huge migration. And what happened to the migrants and the families, their children? Many of us here, we are probably born in those families. And we don't have probably anyone to narrate or describe to us the challenges that our forefathers faced. So today, this particular meeting, in my mind, is more of a atto-samikha, getting into our inner feelings, trying to understand history, and trying to understand how in West Bengal we have gone through one of the world's largest calamity. The consequence of this calamity already described by two speakers in great detail. The only two things that I would say being a member of the West Bengal Legislative Assembly, while you walk through history, please go to the heritage sites in West Bengal. Also try to see where those refugee habitats were. Also try to see today where those big communal riots took place. The great Calcutta killing, where it happened. Who prevented that? Who were the heroes at that time? I would really request you to go, especially to the children, to go deep into those. Visit the West Bengal Legislative Assembly, where Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee, son of Banglar Bag, Dr. Ashutosh Mukherjee, what he did what kind of efforts he made in West Bengal Legislative Assembly. I would request the university to arrange visits to the assembly, the historic place in West Bengal, the Legislative Assembly, the Bidhan Sabha, and try to feel the history. Because history lives through us. তাকে জাগ্রত করে না রাখলে আমরা ভুলে যাই। So today Professor Suranjan Das and Professor Shanti Kumar, they have taken us through that time, and it is today's time when we live. We would like to know more about the great Calcutta killing, the tragedy that happened, where it happened, how it happened, what is the demography, what is the how the demography has been impacted by this migration and crisis, and how it is impacting our economy today, how it is impacting our identity today. So I think with those words I would like to leave, because children don't like too much of lecturing them. They love to explore the curiosity, the mysteries of life. And as I go through Morijhapi looking for locations, I go through the Indian Museum looking at the scripts, I request you to go through whole of West Bengal. And I come from Malda and Murshidabad, and my house is right at the 0 point. From my house, if I spread my two hands, this is Bangladesh and this is India. So I actually, 14 years I experienced living in Malda and Murshidabad, and created a small story in 3,000 villages called Nirbhay Gram, and explored the possibility of bringing the shattered refugees of this crisis to justice. And that kind of approach has given me a lot of experience, more than my political experience. It has given me understanding on the life of the refugees and the migrants and their children, the enactment of the CAA. Many of you know that. Many of you may not know that. I'm sure you can just Google and find, but go deeper than Google, and try to research and find out the calamity that we had to face at one time. And who wonders, as Professor Kumar mentioned Napoleon's words, that politics can pollute. So I think as upcoming budding citizens, you all would like to be cautious, be conscious, be assertive, be alert of the consequences of the contemporary history and politics. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you, ma'am, for your inspiring words. Now, it is a privilege for me to call upon dais our Honorable Chancellor Sir, Professor Dr. Samit Ray, to chair the session. I would request all the audience to remain seated.
Respected Dr. Das, Professor Somrit Bishwas, Srimati Srirupa Mitro Chaudhuri, Chairperson of Sustainability Leaderships and Public Policy Cell, distinguished visiting faculty, School of Law and Justice. Today, we remember a painful chapters of our history, the partitions of Bengal. But I do not want us to remember partition merely as a story of loss. I want us to remember it is as a story of courage, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of our people. Because there is one message that history has given us very clearly. We may be wounded, we may be tested, we may be forced to begin again, but we must never allow adversity to defeat our the spirit. The partition of Bengal in 1947 brought unimaginable suffering. Families were separated, people were forced to leave their ancestral homes, millions crossed borders with little more than what they could carry. Many lost their homes, their livelihoods, tragically their loved ones. For those who experienced it, survival itself was a battle. But that is where the real story begins, because those who crossed the border did not arrive in the West Bengal merely as refugees. They arrived as survivors. And survivors do not remain victims forever. They rebuild, they raise, they create, they fight their way forward. The men and women who came to Bengal had very little in their hands, but they carried something far more valuable, that is determinations. They built homes where there were none. They established schools and colleges. They created businesses. They entered professions. They enriched literature, music, art, education, science, and industry. They raised families. They educated the children, and they contributed to the very development of the land that gave them refuge. This is the spirit of Bengal. Bengal was wounded, but Bengal was never broken. And that distinction is extremely important. When adversity strikes, there are two choices before an individual or a nation. One can surrender to circumstances, or one can say, I will survive, I will rebuild, and I will emerge stronger. Our history tells us which choice Bengal made. The pain was immense, but the resolve was greater. The difficulties were enormous, but the courage was greater. The losses were painful, but the determination to rebuild was greater. And this is not merely the story of Bengal. This is the story of India. Independent India has faced wars, conflicts, terrorism, economic challenges, natural disasters, poverty, and countless obstacles. Yet, every time this country has been tested, India has demonstrated an extraordinary capacity to recover, rebuild, and move forward. We have not merely survived. We have progressed. We have built institutions. We have developed our industries. We have advanced in the science and technology. We have sent missions into space. We have become a major global economy. And when our sovereignty and the security have been challenged, India has shown that it possesses both the strength to defend itself and the resolve to respond when necessary. That is India, that our young generation must inherit. An India that does not seek confrontation but does not fear it either. An India that desires peace but is prepared to defend its peace. An India that believes in dialogues but never compromise on its sovereignty. An India that respects everyone but fears no one. Dear student, this is where the remembrance of partition becomes relevant to you. You may wonder, what does an event that happened nearly 8 decades ago have to do with your life? Everything, because the greatest lessons of the partition is not about the geography, it is about the resilience. Life will test you. Your career will test you. Your failures will test you. Your circumstances will test you. There will be moments when everything you have planned may appear to be falling apart. At such moments, remember the people who rebuilt their lives after partition. They did not have the privilege that many of us have today. They did not have a certainty. They did not know the tomorrow would bring. But they had courage. And courage is often the first capital required to rebuild a life. So, my young friends, never be afraid of adversity. Adversity is not always your enemy. Sometimes adversity is the force that reveals your strength. The greater the challenge, the greater must be the resolve. First survive, then rebuild, then rise. And once you have risen, do not merely return to where you were, go further. That is precisely what Bengal has done. Look at the Bengal today. The Bengal that once received millions of the displaced people did not remain a land of campus and colonies. It transformed, it developed, its people built institutions, industries, universities, business, and commitment. The story of Bengal is therefore not one of a shattered land. Bengal is not shattered. Bengal has developed, Bengal has progressed, Bengal has contributed. And that is the spirit we may carry forward. Our young people must inherit not the fear of the past, but the courage that emerged from it. We must tell the children about the partitions, but we must not hand them threaten. We must give them memory, but also wisdoms. We must give them history, but also ambition. We must teach them about the pain that our ancestors endured, but also about the strength with which they overcome it. Because the nations become truly strong when younger generations learns from the suffering of the previous generation and converts that the lessons into determination for the futures. You are not merely the futures of this university. You are the futures of the Bengal. You are the futures of India, and India today needs a generation that is confident, disciplined, and courageous and ambitious. A generation that does not ask, what will the country give me, but asks what I can contribute to my country. You may become scientists, entrepreneurs, lawyers, doctors, teachers, administrators, artists, engineers, or leaders. Whenever professions you choose, remember that your responsibility does not end with personal success. You have a responsibility towards the society that educated you. You have a responsibility towards the country that gave you opportunities. And you have a responsibility towards the generations that sacrificed so that you could live with greater freedom and dignity. When we remember partition, let us therefore remember not only those who lost, let us remember those who refused to be defeated by their loss. Let us remember the mother who rebuilt her family, the father who started again, the young student who continued his education despite displacement, the entrepreneurs who started with nothing, the teachers who opened a school, the worker who built a new life. These ordinary people performed extraordinary acts of courage. Their lives teach us something very simple. You may take away someone's home, but you cannot take away their determination. So, as we remember the partition of Bengal, let us not allow the remembrance to end in sorrow. Let it end in resolve. Let the pain of the past strengthen our the determination for the future. Let the sacrifices of the procedures inspire us to work harder. Let the resilience of the Bengal inspire us to a dream bigger. And let the strength of India give us the confidence to face every challenge head on. We remember the past. We honor those who suffered. We salute those who rebuilt. And we place that the generations to come will build an India that is stronger, more prosperous, more united, and more confident than ever before. Because this is the spirit of Bengal. And this is the spirit of India. We were divided, we were tested, we suffered, but we survived. We rebuilt, we rose, and we will continue to rise. Let that be our message to the young generation. Let adversity strengthen you. Let challenges sharpen you. Let failures teach you. And let your resolve the stronger than the every obstacle that stands before you. Jai Hind. Just I will finish একটা ঘটনা দিয়ে বলতে চাই। ছোটবেলার থেকে আমি যখন বড় হয়েছি তখন অনেক আমাদের মাসি কাকা পাড়ার রিলেটিভদের মধ্যে থেকে আমরা বড় হয়েছি, তোমরাও হয়েছো যারা এখানে বসে আছেন। সেই সময় এরকম নিউক্লিয়াস ফ্যামিলি ছিল না। তা ছোটবেলা থেকে একটা কথা বা ঘটনা শুনে শুনে আমার বড় হওয়া। যিনি আমাকে এই গল্পটা বলতেন বা ঘটনাটা বলতেন, তার বলার সময়ে ছোটবেলা থেকে শুনতে শুনতে যখন আমি 9-10-এ পড়ি তখন প্রথম হৃদয়ঙ্গম করতে আরম্ভ করলাম যে উনি কি বলতে চাইছেন। উনি একটা গল্প বলতেন যে বাংলাদেশে যোগেশবাবু বলে এক ভদ্রলোক ছিলেন এবং তার স্ত্রীর নাম ছিল হচ্ছে নিরুপমা। তা যিনি গল্পটা বলতেন তিনি বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করতেন যে কিভাবে স্ট্রাগল করে যুদ্ধের মধ্যে দিয়ে বড় হয়েছেন। যিনি বলতেন হচ্ছে যোগেশবাবুর ছেলে, বলতেন যে আমার বাবা একজন বিখ্যাত ডাক্তার ছিলেন ঢাকার। প্রতিদিন সকালবেলা থেকে রাত্রি পর্যন্ত তার পেশেন্ট এবং রুগী দেখাই হচ্ছে একমাত্র কর্তব্য ছিল। তা বাড়ি লাগোয়া হচ্ছে প্রাইভেট চেম্বার, সকাল 6টা থেকে রুগী দেখা আরম্ভ হতো রাত্রি 10টা পর্যন্ত। এই ছিল হচ্ছে তার জীবন। তা যিনি তিনি বলতেন যে এই রকম যখন দিনের পর দিন চলছে, একদিন সকালবেলায় ওনার মা নিরুপমা দেবী হঠাৎ শুনতে পেলেন যে সামনের যে প্রাইভেট চেম্বার আছে, প্রাইভেট চেম্বারে প্রচুর হইচই হচ্ছে। যা হয়, ওই প্রাইভেট চেম্বারের পরিস্থিতি দেখার জন্য জানলার পর্দাটা সরিয়ে উনি দেখতে পেলেন যে ডাক্তারবাবুকে স্ট্রেট খেচে এই গলাটাকে কেটে দেওয়া হয়েছে। তা তখন ওই ভদ্রমহিলা 5 মেয়েকে নিয়ে আর 2 ছেলেকে নিয়ে পেছনের গেট দিয়ে স্ট্রেট স্টিমার ঘাটে। এবং যে ভদ্রলোক গল্প বলতেন তিনি বলতেন যে স্টিমার ওঠার সময় দেখলেন যে ওই সময় বাংলাদেশের আয়ে বলে একটা পরীক্ষা হতো, সেই পরীক্ষায় উনি পাশ করেছেন। তার বয়স তখন মাত্র 15.5 বছর। তা স্বভাবতই 5 বোন, 2 ভাই, মা নিয়ে যখন ওই ভদ্রলোক যিনি গল্প বলতেন কলকাতায় পৌঁছানোর পর উনি চাকরির সন্ধানে বেরোলেন পরিবার রক্ষা করার জন্য। তা স্বভাবতই চাকরি পাওয়ার জন্য বিভিন্ন জায়গায় ইন্টারভিউ দেওয়াটা আরম্ভ করলেন। আর ওই সময় ঠিক কলকাতায় লোনিনী সরকারের তত্ত্বাবধানে প্রথম LIC শুরু হয়, লাইফ ইন্স্যুরেন্স কোম্পানি আজকের। হি ওয়াজ দ্য ফাউন্ডার অফ দ্যাট কোম্পানি। তা উনি প্রথম ইন্টারভিউ দিলেন। ইন্টারভিউ বোর্ডে যারা ছিলেন তারা বললেন, খোকা তুমি ইন্টারভিউ দিচ্ছ, তোমার বয়স মাত্র 15.5, বা তুমি হাফ প্যান্ট পরে এসছো, তুমি চাকরি করবে কীভাবে? বললেন, না স্যার, চাকরিটা করতেই হবে, কারণ হচ্ছে আমার 5 বোন, 2 ভাই আর মা কি হচ্ছে এসছেন, আমরা একটা কাপড় পরে কি হচ্ছে ওই দেশ থেকে এই দেশে এসছি। তা তখন LICতে ওনার বেতন ছিল 15 টাকা। তার 6 মাস পরে ব্যাংকে চাকরি পেলেন, ওখানেও সিলেক্টেড হলেন। সেই ব্যাংকের চাকরির মায়না ছিল হচ্ছে 16 টাকা, 1 টাকা বেশি। তা উনি আর চাকরির জায়গাটা ছাড়লেন না ছেড়ে সারা জীবন কি হচ্ছে LICতে চাকরি করলেন। স্বভাবতই 5 বোনকে বিয়ে দিলেন, ছোট ভাইকে বড় করলেন। পরবর্তী জীবনে তার বিয়ে করার পর আবার 2 মেয়ে হলো, তাদেরও পড়াশোনা শেখালেন আর তাদেরও বিয়ে দিলেন। তা এইভাবে আমরা যদি দেখি যে ওই সময় পশ্চিমবাংলা থেকে যারা, ওই বাংলাদেশ থেকে যারা এসেছিলেন, প্রত্যেকের জীবনে কিন্তু এদেশি যারা তারা ভালোভাবেই ছিলেন, প্রত্যেকের জীবনে কিন্তু এই রকম একটা করে ঘটনা ঘটেছে। তোমরা তোমাদের যে বাবা মাকে জিজ্ঞেস করো এবং যারা এখানে বসে রয়েছেন সবার জীবনেই ঘটেছে। তা এই শুনতে যখন আমি বড় হয়েছি তখন তো আমার মনে হয়েছে, যেটা আমি আমার স্পিচেও বললাম, ডিটারমিনেশন বাড়িয়েছে। পশ্চিমবাংলায় যারা আজকে প্রতিষ্ঠিত বিভিন্ন ক্ষেত্রে, তাদের একটা বিরাট অংশ কিন্তু ওই দেশ থেকে এসেছিলেন। তাদের শক্তি বাড়িয়েছে, পাওয়ার বাড়িয়েছে। এটা কিন্তু আমাদের নেচার। তা যে যোগেশবাবুর কথা বললাম আর যে ভদ্রলোক আমাকে ছোটোবেলা থেকে গল্পটা বলতেন, যোগেশবাবু হচ্ছে আমার গ্র্যান্ডফাদার, আর হচ্ছে যে ভদ্রলোক বলতেন সে হচ্ছে আমার বাবা। তা এই ভাবে প্রতিদিন কি হচ্ছে সবাই এখানে বড় হয়েছে। ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you, sir, for your speech. Your speech made us remember the sacrifices and also gave the strength to build a united tomorrow. I would request all of you to settle down, please. Please settle down. Today, let us listen to the voices and memories of those who experienced partition. Let us honor those who suffered and those who lost their lives. Above all, let us transform remembrance into commitment to peace, fraternity, tolerance, and human dignity. Team School of Media and Communication have prepared a documentary film on the partition horrors, requesting the team to showcase the film.
Imagine you wake up one morning and find that you are no longer a part of a country you were born in.
ওই যে ঘরগুলো দেখা যাচ্ছে এত কাছে, অথচ কোনোদিন আমি ওখানে পৌঁছতে পারবো না। ওটা বিদেশ। যখন তুমি বললে ও বাড়ি কোথাও তোমার দেশের বাড়ি, তখন আমি কি করছিলাম জানো? নিজের বাড়িটা খুঁজে বার করবার চেষ্টা করছিলাম, কারণ কোথাও নয়, ঠিক ওই বাড়ি আমার দেশের বাড়ি।
Yes, we are talking about the partition horrors of India, where millions were displaced and millions were lost.
August 1947. The day is remembered not only as the eve of Indian independence, but also it is remembered as the horrors of the partition of India. In 1947, India got independence, but along with it, our country was divided. A line drawn on paper became a border that divided homes, villages, and families. It was the largest mass migration in history. Around 1.5 crore people left their homes. They traveled for weeks and only a portly in hand, not knowing if they would reach safely. Trains that left full of hope arrived full of sorrow. Mothers lost children, children lost parents. Neighbors who lived together for generations became strangers overnight. Lakhs of people lost their lives, lakhs lost their identity, their land, and their peace. Today we observe this day in remembrance of these horrible horrors of the partition of India.
Today on 14th of August, let us pause in the remembrance of the partition horrors. Let us all unite to reflect the tragedy that reshaped our history.
Let us not banish from the mind the horror of partition of India. Millions displaced, families torn, lives lost. Thus, freedom came with a cost. Let's honor those who suffered and chose unity over division always.
On this solemn occasion, I welcome all of you and express my gratitude to our distinguished speakers, faculty members, and students for being part of this important program. Let us remember the past, understand its lessons, and work together to build a future where history does not repeat its darkest chapters. The students and faculties of School of Liberal Arts and Culture Studies have organized an exhibition at the International Lounge. I would request our Honorable Chancellor Sir, Professor Dr. Samit Ray, along with Dr. Sri Rupa Mitra Chaudhuri Ma'am, to kindly inaugurate the exhibition post this session. Now let's conclude the program with the national anthem. I would request the students of the Musicorum Club to please come up to the stage.
Hello, check, hello. Hello, check.
Hello. Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam Sufalam Malayaj Shitala Sasya Shamala Mataram Vande Mataram Vande Mataram Subhrayosna Pulakitayamini Fullakusumita Drumadara Shobhini Subhrayosna Pulakitayamini Fullakusumita Drumadara Shobhini Subhashini Sumadhura Bhashini Sukhadang Varadang Mataram Vande Mataram Vande Mataram Vande Mataram जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा